our core belief within that nonprofit is that we always want to help somebody be a part of their own solution, not just throw solutions at them. And so that's sort of a guiding principle for us as we're looking at who we partner with.
Welcome to the Real Estate Is Show. I have a really good friend of mine and client, Dave Umphress here from Denver, Colorado. He stopped by to visit today. He is part of the Flourish team, Flourish Network.
Yep.
Thank you. I knew I was going to get it wrong. Part of the Flourish Network. And Denver runs a actually decent sized team out in Denver, Colorado. So excited to have you on the show and let's talk. So let me start with the most important thing. You have a baby on the way.
We do. My wife's due in April with our fourth.
Oh my gosh. I always tell people I have one too many and we have three. How old are your kids?
3, 5, 7. We're in the thick of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's chaos. So
I was going to say mix of it. Thick of it is the right word there. Holy cow. Tell me about your wife. What does she do to support you to help you be successful?
That's a good question. So we cannot be more opposite, my wife and I.
Really?
And we complement each other well. And so she is not terribly interested in things like business and sales and negotiation and things like that. She is a very intuitive listener, and she loves like supporting and coaching and mentoring women that oftentimes find themselves in pretty difficult situations in life. So she does a lot of soul care, mentoring, that kind of thing, and spends most of her time home with our kids. She supports me by helping me feel like I can run and build and not have to necessarily be constantly concerned about, is everybody okay? I mean, she is the backbone of the family. So.
Have there been times in your marriage at all where your work ethic and your desire to succeed or get ahead, whatever you want to define that, hit your goals? We can go into a lot of different ways asking that question. Where you felt like she wasn't supporting you, or, hey, why aren't you home for dinner? Like, have you ever had times in your marriage like that?
I started this business, or, the primary business that I focus on, before we even had kids. And so it's almost like having kids forced us to slow down a little bit. When you're young and single and don't have a ton of responsibilities and you're new in the real estate business, I mean, and I came out of a career working, 70, 80 hours a week. And so I could just run.
What was that career?
Well, career is a stretch. So I came from a nonprofit background, but between that and real estate, I spent about 9 months in the auto industry, which I'm ashamed of. It's the worst. It was the worst.
You learned what not to do.
I learned to empathize with people in a sales process and to make meaningful connections that bring their walls down and cause them to trust you and to care more about the client than the outcome. So there was a ton of value I actually took from it, but it's a miserable industry. But I mean, you essentially create some really great habits that transfer to real estate well.
So what I'm hearing you say is your wife doesn't know any better. She only knows that running 100 miles an hour.
I mean, thankfully, because of the growth of the business, there has been a lot of leverage that's come along with that has caused me to be able to really prioritize the.
And that's leverage of labor, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's just great people. I mean, I'm surrounded by people that are way more talented than I am, that do things way better than I could, and that free me up to pick up my kids from school and to be home on the night.
I had lunch with two of them the other day, and your people really do care, and they see your vision, and they're invested in the company and what you have going. How do you think how important is it that your kids see your work ethic?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super important. I mean, I grew up my dad grew up on a farm in central Illinois, and
really?
The hardest working person I've ever met. And growing up, I mean, I just had modeled for me incredible work ethic. And I think, I hope that my kids would say that they see consistency, that they see, I mean, every morning I'm getting the oldest two, I'm there when they get up and getting them a snack and getting them situated. And then I'm out at the door by 6 a.m. And so they see dad every day consistently.
Are you really? You're out by 6. What time are you home by?
I try to pick the oldest one up from school at 2:45. So,
so you get a good days of work in.
Yeah. I mean, I find that I'm the most productive between about 6 and 10 a.m.
Oh, it's amazing how much work you can get done in the mornings, right? With no distractions.
Yeah. It's quiet. Nobody else is around.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I joke too that some of that time is spent taking in content that's probably a waste of time. So, lots of videos, lots of podcasts.
Do you? That's your learning time?
Kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, it's my favorite time of the day.
I was talking to somebody at the mastermind, the metrics mastermind that we met at today. And we were talking about how important it is to just turn your computer screen off sometimes and just sit there and write or read a chapter in a book when you're at work, to have thinking time at work. And it's just, I tend to do it in the mornings or at night when I'm home, which really robs my family from time I could be with them.
Yeah.
And I could easily find 15, 30 minutes early in the mornings at work when nobody's here or whatever to just
For sure.
turn the screen off. I think a lot of people get stuck with the computer screen as the only way to make money, right? Or your phone. And they forget about how important it is to think. And that's one thing I love about you, Dave, is you have a huge vision, and a good visionary spends time thinking. We say it's natural. We say we're a natural visionary. And I think people tend to think, ideas just naturally come to you randomly. Sure. No. There's thought that goes through it, and there's risk and, reward. And so with that being said, what does your 2024 vision look like? How is your team going to change from this year we've been in this year?
Yeah, it's a good question. You and I benefit from some of the same mentors and great people speaking into our lives. And I remember one of these guys forced me, or maybe us, to read a book a couple of years ago called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham, which is the original Rich Dad, and the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he talks a lot about thinking time, the importance, the value of thinking time, where you're dedicated time to sit down with no distractions and just let your mind go and wander. And for me, it kills my team because I'm constantly ideas just bouncing off, like, let's change this, let's do this, let's add this. But it's so valuable. But anyways, let's see, 2024 vision. Our team is in a pretty exciting growth mode right now. So we're a network of several teams that are kind of combining under this Flourish umbrella.
And you're growing nationally, right? Like, you want to go into multiple states? Like, what are your plans here?
Yeah. So, our dream is that we are having an impact on human flourishing causes in every major metro area in the country. And so we would say anything that limits somebody's ability to live a flourishing life, food insecurity, homelessness, human trafficking, affordable housing, things like that we would say make it difficult, if not impossible, to live a flourishing life. And we believe that our path to affecting those is through great partners that are selling real estate, the desire to motivate their business through these causes and do so together. Everybody wants to know what to do, and they want to do it with somebody else. They don't want to do it alone. And we believe that the future to our impact is great partners everywhere.
Yeah, and that's that community feeling, the culture, right? For sure. So where does this desire come from? Where does this passion for nonprofit come from? You came from Illinois, right? Your family did, at least. Walk me through, here's where you guys are. You guys you're one of the best teams in the nation of using nonprofit in the proper way in connecting with real estate. But where did that come from?
Yeah, I think over time it's become a passion. So I had little to no interest in any of this in college, and
really
had some pretty big stuff happen in college that kind of shook me and that brought me to a place where I was maybe willing to think about something bigger than myself. And long story short, that ended up essentially pushing my wife into working in the nonprofit space after we got married. And so as I sort of stumbled in the back door of real estate, the passion for the things that I care about hadn't gone away. It wasn't a job anymore. Now it was something that we could fund through business. And so I remember the first year I started on a team, on somebody else's team in 2012. And there was an organization that I just really thought highly of called Bloodwater out of Nashville that does water projects and HIV/AIDS work in sub-Saharan Africa. And I went to the guy that was running the team and I said, hey, great news. There's this organization that I love, that I support. And I had this brilliant idea. What if every time somebody bought or sold a house, we partnered with this organization and a little portion of the commission went to the projects? And he said, that's fine if you want to do that, but I have no interest in being involved in that. And I left that meeting thinking, man, if I ever want to see the type of impact that I want to have through business, it's going to have to be my own. It's not going to be able to be somebody else's. With
people that you have the ability to bring into your world that also agree with that. Like when you're on a team, you don't have the ability to be like, let's go bring more team members in that had the same passion, right?
Totally. Yeah. You, without that level of autonomy, you definitely give up a lot of opportunity to influence. And for a lot of people, that's where they want to be. They don't necessarily need to be the one deciding what they're going to focus on and calling the shots.
If you were to hone down the biggest part, because there's a nonprofit world's huge. Like I'm part of the Care Fund. I sit on the board. We help make mortgage and rent payments for families that have children that are like deathly ill, right? Yeah. Because we don't want them to lose their home. So it's a really that's a passion for me because it's little kids.
For sure.
But where is your passion when it comes from nonprofit? If you were to pick one, what's the most important nonprofit work that you do?
I will give you the one I'm the most passionate about and the one that I'm the most focused on.
Okay.
And they're different. My primary passion is water projects in Africa. And I don't know that changes anytime.
Which started almost the first one, right?
Yeah, for sure. Now, we had a big epiphany in 2018, 19 that we were spending a lot of time and money focusing on international causes, and we were ignoring a lot of local things. It's much more difficult to get your hands dirty locally than it is to mail a check overseas and take a trip once a year that looks good on Instagram and that, tells the story. It's much more difficult to go sit across the table with somebody that's currently experiencing homelessness and have a meal and a conversation with them. But what we were doing is ignoring a lot of that stuff. And so you can't deny that the affordable housing issue in every major metro area in the country is severe and it's getting worse.
And interest rates just made it even worse.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just the cost of everything right now is crushing. Nothing crushes somebody's financial situation more than variable costs. And when your rent is a variable cost that could go up by 10, 20, 50%, it's going to completely ruin your budget and then everything else along with it. And so the affordable housing piece is something that we're getting more and more focused on. We would love for that to be our primary focus in time. It's an expensive and complicated issue. And so
what are some of the solutions?
It's a good question. I mean, it depends on who you're talking about focusing on. I mean, so to me, there's really two different groups of people that we could talk about within the affordable housing space. The first one would be the working poor. And this is somebody that is in no danger of buying a house. They're struggling to get by what they really
They're
need.
15 to 20 bucks an hour, maybe?
Probably around that. Yeah, probably minimum wage, poverty line below.
And this is in Denver where things are more expensive than Phoenix.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And it's in every city, but yeah, it's going to be relative to that city. But this is somebody that they need safe, sustainable, reliable housing that they're not going to get kicked out of. There are great nonprofits to focus on that. There are great government programs for some people. I mean, there are some solutions, but the other group would be that lower middle class that could, in time, through coaching and training, education, down payment savings, vision casting for the value of home ownership, they could eventually become homeowners. But it's going to be probably a step back from what they're living in currently to be able to own, and that just takes understanding the value.
So from your team's perspective, does a part of every commission go towards a nonprofit? Like, give me some details there. And if there are people listening that want to contribute towards something, how could they support a cause like that? Yeah.
So for quite a while, we call that work Flourish Alliance. And so we partnered with other nonprofits doing the work because we felt like most of the time we are better used coming alongside somebody than we are trying to do it ourselves. And it's pretty arrogant to say we can do it better. We're going to do it on our own 501c3. And so probably 3 or 4 years ago, we started our own internal nonprofit called Flourish Alliance, that a portion from every closing goes to Flourish Alliance. And then 25% of all profits from Flourish go to Flourish Alliance.
Wow.
And our core belief within that nonprofit is that we always want to help somebody be a part of their own solution, not just throw solutions at them. And so that's sort of a guiding principle for us as we're looking at who we partner with. We want to come alongside and help this person create their solution and not just give them a solution. So
can you give me a story of how you've helped somebody?
There are more than 1 million wells in Africa that are in disrepair because some American organization came in, dropped a well in, showed the people how to use it, and then they disappeared. And then when the well breaks, which inevitably it does, the people say the American's well broke. I wonder when they're going to come back and fix it. And there isn't really any ownership and training and education and how to repair it and how to monetize it. And so, I mean, just a fun story. This is probably 7-8 years ago. We always partner with a community in Africa for 2 to 8 years, depending on the situation. And so that's
a long-term investment.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a relationship, right? I mean, that's we sort of like pioneered this idea with this organization that we, as a community, local American community, would adopt a community in Africa and over the long haul work with them. Well, this community in Mozambique had 2 or 3 wells dug in the first year that we were with them, but they were also taught how to repair it, how to monetize so that they could pay for repairs. And what ended up happening is these guys learned how to repair their own wells, and then they started going around to other communities nearby and repairing their wells too.
Wow.
And then that turned into a business where now they can get hired out to go repair wells. And the last we heard, they were thriving with this.
That's really cool.
There's a book called When Helping Hurts that really guided us a lot.
Are you religious at all?
Yeah. So one of the encounters I had in college was meeting Jesus, and that definitely changed the trajectory of my life.
So I'm religious too. And I don't believe very many things happen by chance. I got inspired this morning and received revelation. I was laying in my bed doing my morning kind of thinking, or I like to wake up early and just think. And I had the idea of adding to our website a pick from 3 nonprofits, and every portion of Rocket Lister deal you order goes to one of these 3 nonprofits. And I even want to add a button that said nominate a nonprofit. It's just interesting that the idea popped in my head, and I had no clue. I mean, when did we decide to have you come on the podcast? Like just recently, right? And I had no clue you were doing this nonprofit work. Yeah. Like this part of your business, I actually had no clue about until you were sitting here today. Yeah. Right. So I really believe, that was inspiration. So I would love to, you tell me whatever charity that is most passionate to you guys. And when we develop this on our website, I'd love to add that charity on our website. So a portion of every single deal. I mean, we do almost $10 million in revenue. So I imagine that could add up fast out of every deal. And it's something like, I have different thoughts on it, and I can get your opinion as a consumer that uses us as a customer. Like, hey, contribute and maybe have buttons 5, 10, because I have their credit card, 5, 10, whatever, or enter a dollar amount, and we'll match whatever you contribute. Like I'm thinking about different ways of approaching it where somebody could feel like they're giving and we're matching or something. What are your thoughts on that?
Totally. I think it's awesome. I came up in the social entrepreneurship world. I mean, the Tom's Shoes, these companies that sort of like launch off of this belief that people want to make an impact with their commerce, right? Like they want to actually see good being done as a result of where they spend their money. Yeah. And there's a lot of mixed opinions about that business model, about whether or not it's sustainable and it works. And I think in general though, especially younger generations, they really want to make an impact with the way they live their lives, sometimes misguidedly, but they desire to see change.
Yeah. And I feel like if I match what somebody makes, then somebody gets the feeling that they also contributed some extra toward it or something. Like there's that feeling. And I think as my kids get older, I'm going to incorporate them into it. I used to help the homeless youth, and there's these runaway kids between like 16 and 21. And don't quote me on the age, but it's like either 16 and 18 or 16 and 21, where like the social services in Arizona don't kick in until they're 21. Like you have to be a certain age before you can get certain services.
Gotcha.
But they have these runaway kids or parents that died or on drugs and are on the streets.
Aging out of the foster care system too.
Yeah. That there's this gap in the system where they don't have somebody to help them.
Yeah, totally.
And, I used to go and cook food with them and hang out with them. And it just felt, and I didn't have money at that time at all to contribute. I mean, everybody has something, right? But I give money today, but it's not the same feeling. And they need money. Just so we're all clear. Nonprofits can't run without capital.
Totally. Yeah. And you make a good point about the money piece too. We talk a lot about desiring to impact our community with our time, with our talent, intellectual property, skills, whatever we might have, and then also with treasure. And I think especially maybe a newer agent that hasn't made a lot of money in the industry yet, and maybe is in a different financial position where they can't give a lot. They can give a lot in their time and in their skill and in their care and in their ability to empathize and be kind to somebody that we're working alongside. There's just so many other ways that we can give to our community than just money.
Yep.
But we also need money.
Well, let's transition this conversation. That was a great part of the podcast. I really appreciate you being open enough to share that passion. I could tell you're very passionate about it.
Thanks.
And it sounds like your culture and hiring revolves around that, right? Is that part of when you meet with a team member? Is that kind of part of the, I don't want to call it pitch, but part of the pitch?
Yeah, for sure. There's really 3 things we look for when we're hiring agents. And I said a little bit ago, we desire to have partners in every corner of the country focusing on these same causes, but doing so by running phenomenal real estate businesses. And there's different, levels and ways for people to partner with us. There's very super tight knit, close partnerships, and there's very loose affiliations that also provide a ton of autonomy, but also the ability to be involved in the nonprofit. But the first and foremost, the main thing we look for is that they're a cultural match, that they care about what we care about. And we've hired great agents in the past that are pretty indifferent about the work that we're doing. And they're great people and they run great businesses, but it's got a short shelf life because in time, we're just going different directions.
I think the retention rate on teams is a subject that people are struggling with in 2023.
For sure.
People are moving brokerages, they're moving teams, when things aren't good. Look, Rocket Lister's down 40% this year.
Totally.
Right. And I imagine you guys aren't doing, I remember when we brought you on a client, you were I think, remind me your COO's name, your operations manager name. It's
So Ingrid is probably who you're thinking.
Ingrid. Thank you.
Our titles are weird sounding. So.
Yeah. So Ingrid, I remember her saying, hey, we were doing 20 to 40 listings a month.
Mm-hmm.
We're down to 5 or 10. I mean, this was at the time when we brought you on,
For sure.
When that interest rates had just gone up. And, sometimes when things like that happen that are out of our control, our team members think that somebody else has figured out better.
For sure. Oh yeah. I mean, I had that conversation with an agent today. And so it does happen. We still lose people. And so retention's a huge focus of ours, but there's always going to be people, especially in down markets, that what we've seen with 3 agents this year that have taken full-time salaried positions with other real estate adjacent companies. And you can't blame them. So
they have to live.
Administrative assistant for a commercial agent. One was a property management position. I mean, it's connected to real estate. I think lots of agents that are struggling right now desire to still be involved, but they got to put food on the table and they got to do something. And I don't blame them. It kills me. I really wish that we could. I mean, our core values are that we have to focus on flourishing communities and flourishing careers and flourishing lives. And we focus a ton on the community piece. That's easy, but it's a lot more difficult to help ensure flourishing careers. And that has to be at the core. Like if we're not empowering flourishing careers, we're not going to have an impact on the community. And this has been a year of taking a step back and seeing businesses flourish. And I think all of our agents are, with exceptions, there's a couple that are having phenomenal years, but a lot of our agents are just not having the year they want to have. And that kills me.
Yeah. What do you, as a leader, that's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night.
Totally.
Of how could I, and that a good leader is invested in their people.
For sure. I mean, this is super cliche and corny, but we're talking a lot right now about surviving today so that we can thrive tomorrow. And this concept that the fact is the next couple of months are going to be a challenge and we have to do whatever we need to do to survive that, whether that's doubling down on activities, driving Uber, like doing something to just survive right now so that your family's taken care of, knowing that a great market is right around the corner.
Let's get into the weeds for a second.
For sure.
Let's talk about surviving. What are you and your team? When I say you, I mean your organization, okay?
Yeah.
What are you doing to be more efficient and hyper-focused to still continue to bring leads in? I imagine if I were to go look at your financials back in 22 or 21, and you're like really deep dive into your marketing, the dollars you spent are different then than today.
Yeah, I think the biggest change over the last couple of years has been just a significant top grading in talent, staff-wise. I mean, our staff are severely overqualified. And so agents have a ton of great support, and now they also need to translate that support into business, right? And so that's been a big change. But I mean, another big change for us in the last couple of years has just been the caliber of agent, the quality of agent. The fact is we've gotten in business with some phenomenal agents in the last year or two that, every time you hire somebody that's more experienced, more talented, bigger vision, higher production, however you want to monetize, put a number on that, it brings everybody else up and it causes everybody else to think bigger and to reach higher. And that's been a huge change.
Do you generate leads for your team?
Yeah. So we, the primary source for our leads is Google AdWords. And so we drive a lot of traffic to our website through Google that gets them to register. And then,
so I ran pretty heavily. I was investing almost 50 grand a month at one point in Google AdWords, but this has been years. So 2018, I know a lot of things change. At that time, I knew my ranking.
It's not as good as it's been in the past, but that's not our primary source of business either. And so I'd say maybe
from a marketing perspective, that's where the focus dollars are.
For sure. And some agents, that's where they want to spend their time, right? Like maybe they're new to town. They don't have a big sphere. They aren't maybe terribly comfortable doing some other lead generation activities. They'll spend a lot of time there, but we're a very sphere heavy team and we're a very open house heavy team. And so if everybody spent all of their time on those 3 things, which is the most common 3 things on the team, we're doing business plan reviews right now with every agent on the team.
Do you mind if we deep dive a little bit into open houses? Like what? So how can an agent listening to this top agent be more successful in their open houses with their team?
Just focus on sellers, neighbors in the door. The most common. So I until I'm blue in the face, I teach this open house class around town, and I've probably taught it 100 times. But the whole premise of this class is get neighbors in the door. You can summarize the whole thing in that. And I, over time, have just seen over and over again the importance of holding an open house at a super high level and getting as many neighbors in that door to see you do it as possible.
And how are you doing that? Are you going to knock beforehand? Are you sending out letters and Facebook ads? Like walk me through your approach of doing it.
For sure. So it depends on a couple factors, price point, type of neighborhood, if it's your listing or not, those kinds of things determine how far in advance. But let's assume for the sake of argument that it is your listing and it's a neighborhood that you desire to work more in. We'd list stuff in neighborhoods sometimes that we're not going to spend a ton of time in.
Yeah.
And those we might do something a little different. But if we have time, we'll send postcards 7 to 10 days ahead of time. The day before the open house, we'll circle dial the whole neighborhood. Great news. We're selling your neighbor's house tomorrow and we're having a party or a launch party or sometimes we call it an open house, whatever you want to call it. We'd love it if you stopped by. They say, great, we'll see you there. Look out for the signs. The most important piece though is the invitation right before. And so we have a strategic invitation that of course has the details, where the house is, time, but there's something sticky on it. Not sticky, like physically sticky, but like something that they would maybe catch their eye and keep it in their drawer that says something about the value of the team. The team sells homes for 3.2% more on average, selling houses in, an average of 3 days, whatever the thing might be that we're currently, advertising. And it's something that we want them to hang on to. But what I've found over time is that if you have a conversation with somebody this close, 20 minutes before the open house, there's a significantly higher chance that they show up.
So as far as inside the open house, capturing the data, walk me through that. Like what do you do to get their data?
Sure. I firmly believe that people don't want to be captured and that they desire to be engaged and that they come into an open house fearing lead capture.
Okay.
Right. And so they'll see a sign-in sheet as soon as they walk in and, thinking about what kind of Daffy Duck name they're going to put down. And so my strategy, we'll still do a lead capture thing, like maybe an iPad that they can choose to sign in or something like that. And it's a little different whether it's a potential buyer or seller. But when somebody first comes into the open house, my first question is, Ben, a friend of both of ours, his old script was people come into my open houses for one of two reasons. They're either looking to buy or sell. Which one are you? He can pull that off. I can't. That's not my style. But I ask a similar question. And when they come in, I say, thanks for stopping by. Are y'all in the neighborhood just passing through or do you live around here? And I basically ask them, do you live in the neighborhood? Are you a neighbor? Or are you looking to live in the neighborhood? Are you a buyer? And that's...
I like that. It's the same question. I believe in the Sandler sales approach. And one of the steps in the Sandler sales approach is to qualify. And I think oftentimes people assume everybody's qualified to work with you.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm hearing you say is you qualify, just like you would pre-qualify somebody for a loan.
Yeah.
Like you qualify them to see if it's even worth capturing a lead from them.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you're having a conversation instead of just pissing everybody off with a sign-in sheet, right? You're actually qualifying them and saying, is this a relationship?
For sure. And it's going to determine which route I go in the conversation, of course.
I love that.
If they're a seller, my desire is to engage them on pain points in the neighborhood for the most part. I'm not going to go straight there, but I want to know, what do you think about the neighborhood? What do you love about it? How long have you been here? Like, if you could go anywhere, where'd you go? If I can get them talking about motivation, about, usually under the pretense of them helping me, right? Like I want some help, understanding the neighborhood and like, what should I know?
You are preaching what I love it. Dave, you're like my guy because people always want to come to your rescue. It's human nature.
Totally. When they want to help too.
They do. That's what I mean by come to your rescue. They want to help you.
For sure. Yeah. And so if they feel like they are helping, they're helping me understand the neighborhood, maybe sales features, things benefits that I can.
You have to be willing to be vulnerable. Sales people feel like they have to be the expert on everything and they can't ask for help and it makes them look dumb. But if you are vulnerable, people are willing. Now you have to do it strategically. And it sounds like you figure that out.
For sure. And there's obviously a goal of where we take the conversation at some point in that interaction. But my desire would be that eventually they tell me everybody's going to move at some point, a year, 5 years, 10 years, or you're going to leave in a box, but you're going to leave at some point. And the question is, if you could go, where would you go? My desire is that eventually when we part ways, that I have a decent idea of what they're looking for. And I'll tell them, we, like you mentioned earlier, our team at the time was carrying 30 to 50 listings a month. Right now, maybe 10 to 20. Yeah. We list a lot of stuff and I'll keep an eye out. I'd be happy to just keep an eye out on what's coming up. And, 20 to 25% of all listings or houses sell before they go to market anyways. And so you might as well talk with the person that's listing more than anybody in the area to keep an eye out.
So if there's an agent watching this, how would they reach out to you to learn more from you? Not necessarily join your team. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe it doesn't, but partner with you, learn more from you. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
I'm pretty easy to find on social media and things like that. They could DM me. They could email me.
How would they find you on social media?
So my last name's Umphress, Umphres, Dave Umphress. There's only like 2 or 3 of us in the country. One of them's a teacher at Harvard or a professor at Harvard. That one's not me. I'm the one that's the real estate agent. And I mean, Dave at umphressgroup.com is my email. But the fact is, I mean, I have conversations regularly, not recruiting conversations at all, just business building conversations.
Yeah.
I love talking to agents about building businesses. And I don't care if we're partners or not, if we ever meet or not. Like just this morning, somebody was talking about building a team. And I said, let's jump on the phone and I'll explain the 5 different levels of value that agents can provide to agents on the team to determine what to charge. Because the question was like, how much should I charge agents on a team? And it really depends on what you're giving them.
Yeah.
And as you climb this ladder of value, the more value you give, the more you can charge. Like I love having those conversations. And so I don't care if me and this person are ever going to meet or be business partners or not. I mean, it's all about this vision of not just my people flourishing, but everybody living this flourishing life where they're bringing hope and healing and joy and support to the ones around them, like through running great businesses.
You're one of the more genuine people when it comes to that. And I really respect that about you, Dave. Now, I did not prepare you for this.
Okay.
So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
You are on the Real Estate Is show and you get to define what your word or words are that define real estate. Now, I actually think I already know what your words are, but I'll let you define it. So you get to say real estate is, and then fill in the blank. What is real estate to Dave Umphress?
I'm going to say that real estate is the kingdom.
Ooh.
And it's kind of complicated, but
that's deep.
So, I mean, one of my favorite stories of all times, and not to get too preachy, but there's this guy named Matthew that lived a couple thousand years ago, and he tells the best story that's only 2 sentences long, and it's about real estate. It's a real estate story. And he was a friend of Jesus's, and he was essentially just telling the story that he had said. And he said the kingdom, which is, this perfect world that someday that we came from, that someday we'll see, that we all long for. Like we all desire to see things set right. And we see pain and we see hurting and we see injustice in the world. And it hurts all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody can deny that they're not bothered by the pain in the world, right? We all desire for things to be made right. He said that the kingdom is like somebody that's walking through a field and they stumble across buried treasure. And in their joy, they go sell everything they own and they go buy that field. And to me, like that's real estate. I mean, the first house that my wife and I ever bought, we sold everything to buy this house, right? So we were living in an apartment with 3 pools and a pond in the middle, or a lake in the middle, and gyms and all this stuff. And we went and basically spent every penny we had to go buy this 50-year-old house that hadn't been touched since it was new, that had shag carpet and needed to be gutted. And we took a giant step back to buy this first house, right? Yeah. And we effectively sold everything we had to buy this house.
Yeah.
And it was life-changing. We were kids, and that first house just set us off on a completely different financial journey. And to me, the biggest value of real estate is this like redemptive process that we get to see in the midst of it. And I love redemptive real estate businesses. I firmly believe that our path to seeing this world we dream of, and at least when I say we, I mean like my people, like everybody I know that I'm connected with, like we dream of seeing a world that we can help make happen through real estate.
Well, thanks for coming on the show today. Is there a question I should have asked that I didn't ask?
I think a good question that I enjoy talking about that you could have asked would be around the retention piece that we talked about, like the recruiting and retention piece. Is like what do teams look for? How do teams find and retain great talent? I feel like that's a topic that lots of people that I rub shoulders with are always talking about and asking and looking for.
So what do you think? Give me 2 or 3 bullet points on that.
For sure.
What is that?
So I love the Harvard study on happiness, which is the longest standing study on human behavior really in our lifetime. And for over 100 years, they've studied this group of men that were, they were boys when they started studying them, and then they grew up, and then now they're studying their kids. It's a phenomenal study. It's like,
is this a PDF you can get offline?
Oh, it's online. So if you just Google Harvard study on happiness.
I'll attach a PDF to this podcast so you can see it.
And it's an ongoing study. It's one of the most fascinating that my team is sick of hearing me talk about it. It's insanely fascinating. And the result over and over again, over decades and decades of research has shown over and over again that the 2 things that people long for are loving relationships and meaningful work. And the people that they study that have those 2 things are overcoming illnesses that others aren't. They're reporting significantly higher levels of satisfaction, lower levels of depression. I mean, it's those 2 things is what everybody longs for. Loving relationships, people that actually know you and care about you and are doing life with you, and work that matters, work that you actually feel like when you get out of bed and go in the morning, you're making a difference. And that when you leave this earth someday, you'll be able to look back and say, man, as a result of my millions of hours, who knows how many hours you ended up working, the world's a better place. And I firmly believe that if real estate teams make those two things their primary goal of creating an environment of culture, that people that care about each other, that would go to war for each other, that carry burdens together, that cover for each other, and work that matters, work that somebody actually feels like they're making a difference, not just selling houses, making money, but they're actually changing the world as a result of their work. I think that your retention goes up. I think you attract maybe higher levels of talent than you would have otherwise. And I think it's a joy to do. It's a joy to go in the morning. It's a joy to do some of the monotonous things within the industry because it matters to you.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I know this is totally last minute, and I know you're in town, so I want to grab you to be on the show. And I really appreciate you spending the time to come on.
Of course. I appreciate the opportunity.